It's the 24th of April 2024. The war in Gaza is now 200 days old. And tonight we have questions that must be answered. Who tied the hands of those who were found buried in Gaza's mass graves? Who stripped the bodies? The United Nations is asking these questions. Hence, we must ask them. The United States, which is the strongest ally of Israel, is asking these questions. Hence, we are asking tonight, who tied the hands of those found buried in Gaza's mass graves? No one deserves to be denied dignity in death, but that's what's happened in Gaza. This is a heartbreaking story, one I'm afraid you must know. Mass graves have been found at two hospitals in Gaza. The first one is the Nasser Hospital. This is in Khan Younis in central Gaza. The second is the Al-Shifa Hospital. This is in Gaza City, in the north of the enclave. 283 bodies were recovered at the Nasser Hospital. 42 of them were identified. Now, this used to be Gaza's second largest hospital. Now it's a graveyard. The hospital came under attack in February. First, it was shelled, then raided. The Israeli army ordered everyone inside Nasser Hospital to evacuate. At that time, the hospital had not just the wounded and other patients who were receiving treatment. There were also displaced people who were taking refuge inside the medical facility. The hospital was under siege for one whole week. Stranded inside were patients, their family members, caretakers, hospital staff and refugees. The Israeli army withdrew from Nasser Hospital on the 22nd of February. On the 7th of April, the IDF withdrew from Khan Younis. Palestinian emergency teams started digging the hospital compound. They found mass graves in the hospital courtyard. Among the dead were the elderly, women and the wounded. Some bodies were found with their hands tied and stripped of their clothes. Something similar happened at the Al-Shifa Hospital. This used to be Gaza's largest medical facility. Israeli troops raided this hospital. The first raid was in November 2023. The hospital building was heavily damaged, as a result of which the facility stopped functioning. In January then, the IDF claimed it had dismantled Hamas's command structure in northern Gaza. But in March, the IDF decided to raid Al-Shifa again. Israeli forces said they were conducting quote-unquote precise operational activities against terrorists. The Hamas-run Ministry of Health in Gaza said that some 300 people were sheltering in Al-Shifa at the time of the raid. This was a 2-week-long siege. When the troops withdrew, UN workers went into the hospital. They said the hospital was reduced to, and I'm quoting again, an empty shell. Most of the equipment has become ashes. Now, 2 mass graves have been found in the courtyard of Al-Shifa. The first one is in front of the hospital's emergency building. The second is in front of the dialysis building. In total, 30 bodies have been found buried. 12 have been identified. Here too, hands of some of these bodies were tied. Who did this? Who tied the hands? Who stripped the bodies? The United Nations says it's horrified. It says at both the hospitals, the bodies were found buried deep in the ground and they were covered with waste. The UN is calling for an independent, effective and transparent investigation. The UN Human Rights Commission wants international investigators to step in. It said, and I quote, "Let's be clear, the intentional killing of civilians, detainees and others who are hors de combat is a war crime. It refers to those who are incapacitated or out of action during a war because of injuries. It's French for out of combat." The story of Gaza's mass graves is echoing in power corridors around the world. The UN says it feels the need to raise an alarm because of impunity and serious violations of international human rights law passing under the radar. The Palestinian civil defense that dug out these bodies says some of the dead were killed by the Israeli army during the siege. The others were buried before the siege. Israel rejects these allegations. The Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, is calling the claims baseless and unfounded. The IDF claims that during its operations near the Nasser Hospital, Israeli troops examined the corpses that were already buried there. The IDF statement reads, I'm quoting here, The examination was conducted in a careful manner and exclusively in places where intelligence indicated the possible presence of hostages. The examination was carried out respectfully while maintaining the dignity of the deceased. The United States has expressed concern. U.S. State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel said, and I'm quoting again, "The reports are incredibly troubling and we're inquiring on this with the government of Israel." You see, this is not a story of claims and counterclaims. This is a story of serious human rights violations. It is about robbing people of their dignity in death. This is a story of accountability. You cannot get away with abusing innocent people. Even in times of war, there is a red line that you cannot, and I repeat, you cannot cross. Tying hands, stripping bodies, dumping them in mass graves, covering them with waste. How can someone be so inhuman? You know what's scary? The story is not over. The United Nations says there could be many more such bodies. For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.